Hello to those of you who are here already, which is nobody. So I'm talking to myself right now. Hopefully, some of you will come around, and I'll have someone to talk to. But hey, look, there's some of you. Hi, 3 of you. I'm going to sit here and open up a document that I compiled with a lot of the questions that you guys asked in that first discussion. I tried to kind of sort them out by what topics they were. And again, at any time, you should be able to comment over here on the right-hand side and ask a question or whatever it is that you want to comment at any given time. So I'm trying to open this document. It's giving me some issues. Word is being word. No, I don't want to. I guess it's attempting to open my document right now. But in the meantime, I'm sure that a few of you have already seen me before. You already know who I am. This is no real surprise to you. For those of you who are with me in a course for the first time, welcome. Happy holidays. It's kind of an odd time to be taking a course, but we're in this together for the next 3 weeks or so of our break. So I'll try to make it as painless and enjoyable and task-free as possible. So I figure maybe I'll start and tell you a little about me. Maybe I'll do that. So you can call me Jen in any of the emails that you write to me in. I am a last year, that's what I like to call it, last year PhD student in industrial and organizational psychology. I also have a master's degree in business management, and I pursued my undergrad here at FIU in psych and religious studies. I liked religious studies, what can I tell you? I did my master's up at UF, so I have some experience with traveling around to do your degrees, but I've spent most of my time here at FIU, and FIU is definitely the university that I'm the most passionate about. So I'm really, really good at professional development stuff. Most times, if people are going to pick like the one thing that they could be really, really good at, they'd pick something that could make them a lot of money. Like, I'd be really tall and I could play basketball and get a bajillion $1 million contract and never have to work again. No, me, it's this professional development, career-related stuff involving psychology. So hopefully I'll be able to help you a little bit as we go on here. So the idea here is that I'm going to go through these questions, and then I'm going to talk to you a tiny bit about assignments and other little odds and ends, unless you hop in and you ask me some sort of question that completely derails everything, which inevitably happens. So somebody asked, do you think you have to be a little crazy to be a psychologist, or do you think you can get crazy over the years? And I wanted to touch on that first because somebody actually asked me a question like this in an in-person gigantic auditorium class last semester, and they were genuinely concerned, and they asked, can I be a psychologist or something in the field of psychology if I have some sort of mental illness myself? And it took me some composure not to laugh, because there is a major stereotype that all psychologists and all psychology majors are crazy. And I happen to believe in that sort of thought process. I think that there's a little bit of something in the way that our brains work. Whoa, that was Discord being really angry. We're going to get rid of that. There's a little bit of something different in the way that our brains work, and it makes us a little more empathetic to some things, a little more curious about other things, and it can make us in general a little bit more neurotic, which we've been taught that being neurotic is this abnormal personality trait that we don't want to have and we don't want to cultivate. We kind of want to be the opposite. We want to be more stable. But I definitely think that if you are somebody who feels like you're a little crazy, I can tell you for sure, I'm a little bit more than a little bit crazy. Don't feel discouraged by that, or don't think that it's going to influence your career in any way in the future. When I started in undergrad in psychology, I knew I was going to do psychology. I was 17 when I started school. I am officially a high school dropout. I can tell you all that story later if you want to hear it. Some of you already know it. But I started at 17 after getting a GED, and I knew I wanted to do psychology. And I thought that I wanted to do something involved with social anxiety and adolescence. And since I had experience with social anxiety and adolescence, I knew I was going to be the perfect therapist for those children because I had been through it before. So you can take one of two paths when you're looking at a road like that, where you have some sort of experience and it makes you feel like it's going to lend you to a certain job. So one direction is you can take that job. In my case, say I would have decided to be a adolescent phobia, therapist, and it could make you so much better. Could make things that you feel better, helping others, could lessen your own anxiety. It could just be this tremendous, amazing experience. Or I feel like it could go the other way. If you're somebody that suffers a lot from something like, in my case, with social anxiety and whatever, and you went in and you were a therapist every single day with people who had similar issues, it could derail you from your own personal progress and overwhelm you to the point of maybe even a little bit of regression in terms of your own treatment. And I've lost like 5 of you. So I've already at 7 minutes reached the point of boring someone. So success, great success. But yes, I do think that if you are a therapist over a long period of time, it can definitely make you a little skewed and the normal world might not be the same to you. So a lot of you asked about just general questions regarding your bachelor's degree and what can you do with it? Do people graduate with it? What is the success rate? What do I have to do to be successful with this degree? And the first question, is there a high employment rate for students graduating with BAs in psychology? And then somebody else said something about the low employment rate. And I think that a misconception for you guys is that there's this niche of jobs that you can get with your degree in psychology. And if you can't get those types of jobs, then you're not a successful psychologist, or your degree was a waste, or XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. So I will actually send this to you, but I've developed a catalog of sorts of careers that you can get in psychology, ranging from high school diploma all the way through a doctoral degree, but focusing very heavily on the bachelor's level degree and the kinds of jobs that you can get. The salary ranges aren't going to be tremendous. They're not going to be jobs where you're going to be able to survive on your own in Miami. But if you're realistic and you look at any other career and job market, nothing is like that right now. So there are a lot of jobs that you can get, whether it's through social services or working with the government. Somebody asked about that. Or working in the business sector or legal sector or therapy sector and whatnot, that start somewhere around 20 or 30 and start building and building to where once you're there for maybe 10 years, you could have a $50,000 or $60,000 career, which is not terrible. It's not the best, but it's not terrible either. Am I on the right track to get to my end goal? Somebody asked me that. And I think that some of you might have done the Wondering Map activity or the 5-year plan activity and went, this is totally bogus. I'm just going to do this for a grade. But those types of activities are very good to help you figure out whether you are on the right path or not. When I did my Wondering Map, which is floating around. It's floating around in my office somewhere. I always do every assignment that I make you guys do because I feel like a good leader always leads by example and not by forcing someone to do something that they wouldn't. But if you look at those wandering maps or like the 5-year plan type things, you can start seeing trends in what you're interested in and where you want to go with this degree. Somebody asked, is it beneficial to declare a minor while earning a bachelor's degree in psychology? So another common misconception is that if you guys are doing your degree in psychology right now, that you are somehow married to psychology for the rest of your life. You and psychology are going to grow old together. You're going to do the crosswords on Sundays. You're going to yell at psychology to turn the stupid football game down or to turn the home life network, whatever, down, right? You're going to have a long life with psychology. That's not necessarily the case. Bachelor's degrees and master's degrees or bachelor's degrees and doctoral degrees don't work the same way that associates and bachelors do. They're not linked together. So you can graduate with your degree in psychology without having minored in anything else and start pursuing a master's degree in a completely different field. You can go into speech or occupational therapy. I see that's a very common psych thing. You can go into law school. You can go into med school. You can go into business school. I went into business school. You can do virtually anything else that doesn't have to do with psychology. Granted, you're going to have the capabilities to handle the coursework at a graduate level for that particular subject. But it's not like you have to specify in something or minor in something or declare something at an undergraduate level in order to have a chance to do it in the future. I double majored only because I was really OCD. I still am really OCD. And I sat with the course catalog and I sat with the requirements and said, how many degrees can I get out of these 120 credits? And I literally plotted and went, okay, these are exactly the classes I'm going to take. And I'm going to end up with 2 degrees and 2 minors. And I'm going to get the most out of this as possible. That's the only reason I did it. You don't need to do it either. Do it if it's what you're passionate about, or if, say, you wanted to do a minor degree in business or in like finance or something because you were going to end at a bachelor's degree and then go off into something finance related, yeah, then sure, your minor degree will get you somewhere. But in terms of specifically continuing on in psychology, I see zero purpose for you to major in anything else. But take things I say with a grain of salt because I am not omniscient. I'm not the god of psychology, as much as I like to pretend that I am. I'm not. I'm really not. So don't take everything I say too to heart without doing your own research first. So this is my favorite question because everybody thinks in an incorrect way about this. So if you ask somebody, or if somebody were to ask you, or whatever, how are you going to be successful in psychology? Most of the time you're going to reply, I have to eventually go get my PhD, and then I'm going to have my career as whatever kind of psychologist it is that you're going to be. That is not true. You do not need to have a PhD for such a wide variety of psychology jobs. So I have like a little thing that you can go and watch. It's about graduate school, and I have you ask yourself some questions when it comes to psych. And unless you want to be a psychiatrist, some sort of medical doctor, a university professor in an institution that requires research, so somewhere like FIU, or you have a very specific consulting type degree that just requires the extra education, you do not, I'm looking directly in the camera, you do not need a PhD in psychology. Almost any job that you could ever want in any area of psychology would be fulfilled with a master's degree. So master's degrees are 2 years. They're a set curriculum. It's usually 36 credits that are done over 2 fall and 2 spring semesters. Some are accelerated, and you can do them in a year, and they pack all those 36 credits in. Some of them do it in like a 16-month thing. They have different times and schedules for every individual program, but it's a short program. You will pay for it out of pocket. You will not get financial assistance. Grants don't exist in graduate school anymore, like Pell Grants and all that types of stuff. So unless you are very successfully employed, you're going to have to take out some sort of loan to get yourself through that graduate program. But the bonus is that it's only 2 years. And when you get out, you can usually go and start doing whatever it is that you want to do right away with that master's degree. Because as you're doing the degree, you're doing something applied that's going to give you some sort of experience in whatever field. Like if you go do the counseling master's degree here at FIU, it prepares you upon your exit to kind of like shoot directly into a job and be successful at it. It just does. Otherwise, there would be no successful graduates. You guys haven't asked me anything. That means I'm talking really fast and I'm somehow intimidating you with my Smurf hair. All of the people that know me, who are non-progressive people, have called me a Smurf. Why did you need to make your hair like a Smurf? Do you need to seek attention? Why do you need that attention? No, it's winter break. And I want to pretend like I'm in Frozen. And this is my Elsa hair. Okay, what can I tell you? Ask me questions, please, so I stop rambling. Or we're going to be talking about Elsa for the rest of the night. But back to what I was saying about the PhD thing. So a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people who go into psych want to become a therapist of some sort, whether they want to be a therapist in a hospital or some sort of social work setting, or they want to open their own practice or whatever. And you do not need a PhD or any sort of doctoral degree to be a therapist. You need a 2-year master's degree in mental health counseling or whatever it is that they call it at whatever university you decide to go to. And then you can do something called an LMHC afterwards, which is licensed mental health counselor, which is about 10 months in addition to your master's degree, which is not mandatory, but it's like a special little accreditation that gives you that extra little title to your name. But other than that, your success as a therapist is going to depend highly on what you specialize in, maybe to some degree to what university you go to. So I'm a massive anti-private university person. You may hear me say something bad about Nova at some point. Someday Nova's going to find me and they're just going to off with my head. But you're better than that. Don't go to those places where you have to spend tons and tons of money on your degree. But you do not need anything more than a master's to be a counselor in pretty much any field of counseling. You don't. Go look it up. Go look up LMHC, maybe with the word Florida on Google if you want to find out what specifically goes on here. And they have a list on the LMHC website of all of the counseling programs that are kind of paired with the actual certification, meaning that their coursework counts towards some part of the certification that you need to do. And FIU is one of those places that ends up with that extra progress towards that certification. So you have a very minimal thing that you have to do afterwards to get accredited. So you don't need a PhD to do it. You don't need a PhD. Don't do a PhD. No, sorry. I am many years deep into a PhD, so I'm very, very jaded at this point. So would I need to complete an internship before entering grad school for psychiatry? Would I need a PhD before getting a professional job as a psychiatrist? So another question, I guess, that a lot of people coming into psychology have is, what is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So if you want to pursue psychiatry, you are definitely not going to get a PhD. You are going to go to med school and you are going to take a psychiatry track, but you will still have to do rounds and residency and all of the same things that you have to do for med school, because psychiatrists write prescriptions. That is essentially what the difference is between the two. A psychologist, a clinical psychologist, a therapist, a counselor, whatever you want to call them, does non-medicated therapy with you, where they either talk things out or whatever it is that they do, or they do regression therapy, whatever their particular field is, they do that. But they have nothing to do with any sort of medication that goes towards helping or curing any sort of mental illnesses. So you go see a psychiatrist when you need something related to antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication or anything that ties into the medical aspect of mental health. So a good therapist office would have both of them so that they communicated with each other. A good psychiatrist would understand some things about therapy so that they could work with you and not just prescribe you medication. But essentially, if you're a psychiatrist, you got to go to med school. Is it possible to work in the field without a PhD? I think I already told you that. I might have said something about it. My question is about the steps to become a clinical psychologist. I think I talked to you about that as well. So if you do decide that you want to do a PhD in psychology, I will tell you now, if you get to the point where you apply and you go in and you interview with somebody and they ask you what your ambitions are, you never, ever, ever tell them that it is to have your own practice and be a therapist. They will reject your application on the spot. PhDs are geared towards research. They are not as much geared towards the practical application of whatever field of psychology it is that you're going into. So if you want to be a therapist and you want to have your own practice, or even if you want to spend your time mostly working on working with patients, but sometimes maybe doing research, that's again why a PhD is not necessarily the place for you. They're going to be in labs. They're going to be doing the background sorts of work that lead up to the practical applications of the things that you would do as a counselor. So to be a clinical psychologist, you wouldn't call yourself a clinical psychologist unless you did do a PhD, but I'm going to assume you mean counselor. You'd go through your master's degree, you'd get certified, and then you'd start working wherever it is. But if you do want to own your own practice, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. So think about when you go, or if you were to go to a therapist's office, if you've never been to one before. I have, yay. So you go in and you have the actual office space. You have, most of the time, some sort of receptionist who deals with pretty much everything in terms of making appointments and talking to insurance companies and collecting co-payments and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got rooms for however many people are there actually practicing clinical psychology. So you're essentially running a business. You're starting your own business. You're going to need a lawyer to make sure that you are following all kinds of guidelines. You're going to need an accountant. You're going to need everything that a business needs. So thinking that you're going to go through any level of schooling and go into just being a practicing psychologist is a little bit of a lofty goal there. Your best bet is going to be signing on with a firm, just like a lawyer would once they get out of law school, signing on with a firm as some sort of junior level psychologist and working your way up, or getting to the point where you can accumulate enough clients to sustain your own business. You'll also have to deal with working with the insurance companies and going through whatever paperwork they require to get yourself covered by mental health medical insurance, which is not the same as regular medical insurance. So it's a big to-do. Still no questions? No, still no questions. You got it. You guys are good. You should go listen to me ramble. What is the best way to prepare myself for the work in grad school? I have a feeling, it's just a tiny feeling, that most of you do want to go to some sort of grad school. Okay. I think I already rambled about this a little bit, but in terms of the work, you're going to take 3 classes a semester, which is going to be 9 credits. You are going to have to be there. It's usually going to be twice a week, like 3 hours a class. You're probably going to be in person like 5 or 6 hours a week per class, something like that, since you're only going to 3 classes in this semester. The actual work for the courses, I would not say is that much worse than something like research methods, which I know most of you just cringed at the thought of research methods. But if you've already taken it, especially, stop, Discord. I cannot go and meet you to battle Pokemon right now. Yes, that's what my Discord is going off about. Shh. Don't judge me. I'm not judging you. I don't even remember where I was. Oh, grad school. Sorry. So most of the time you're not able to work while you go to grad school. So you do have a lot of time to finish the coursework, but you don't necessarily have a lot of funding to live by. So if you do decide to pursue a PhD and you get into a PhD program, what normally happens is that you are put onto some sort of assistantship for about 4 years. It can be 5. Maybe if it's really special and you've done something really great or you're working in a particular department, they can wiggle your way all the way through your PhD program. But for the first 4 years, you're usually getting some sort of stipend that pays for your tuition and to some degree your health coverage. And it also gives you a living stipend, which can either be given to you all at once at the beginning of the semester, like a loan, depending on what the program does, or it gets prorated out like a paycheck for you. And with that stipend, you usually have to do the equivalent of 20 hours of work a week, meaning you'll either be a research assistant to a professor, or you'll be in the psych advising lab talking to students just like you about what they're supposed to do with psychology, or you could just be working a front desk in the psych office, or you could be a teaching assistant helping somebody with their courses, and then eventually they'll start trusting you enough to give you your own classes, which when you take research methods or you see courses that have labs, usually the people that are teaching the labs are PhD students that's their assistantship for the year. So the base assistantship, at least when I had it, was $18,000 a year. You have to somehow live off of $18,000 a year while you're doing that. Some universities might offer more, some might offer less, and assistantships are never guaranteed. Your university could go through an economic bad time where there's just not enough assistantships to go around. So you have to plan out more for how you're going to live your life outside of your actual degree when you're going to grad school than you necessarily do getting through the degree itself. And keep in mind that they say that a PhD is 4 years, but the average is actually somewhere between 6 and 7. And I think I've lost track. I think I just started my 8th year. It takes a while. If you're doing a PhD, you'll be doing that same 36 credits of coursework. You'll be doing a thesis depending on where you go. You'll have comprehensive exams, which are like the psychology equivalent of taking the bar exam. And then you'll have to do a dissertation. So there's a lot involved. You need to make sure prior to trying to get into any of these programs that you're really, really certain about what you want to do. And master's programs and PhD programs don't work like you think that they do. You kind of need to pick one or the other if you're going in the same field. So I'm in IO psychology, and if I had gone and done a master's in IO psychology, I would have had to go, once I got into my PhD, and take all of those classes, those 36 credits, all over again. They don't transfer. You don't do a master's and then transition into a PhD program. You do a master's or you do a PhD program. So I chose a master's outside what I knew I wanted to do my PhD in that would complement it in some way, which was business, because IO psychology is heavily related to business. But if you want to get a PhD someday in clinical psychology, and right now you're like, I'll just do the master's in mental health counseling and then I'll do the PhD later and I'll just roll right into that program, that's not how it's going to work. You have to start over. Graduate credits 99% of the time do not transfer to other graduate programs. They just simply don't. So when picking those programs, that's another thing you have to consider. It's not like you can go, oh, I'm going to do my first year of my counseling master's degree at FIU, and then I'm going to apply over to because I really like their program better. And when I get in, I'll take that year and I'll just go over to and do it. It's not like a Miami-Dade FIU situation here, where we do our 2 years because it's cheaper there, and then we graduate at FIU or or wherever it is we're going to go. It does not work like that. So save yourself the hassle and the money. It doesn't work like that. So sad that you don't have questions for me. So sad. I would love to learn about government job opportunities that psychology jobs have to offer. So there is actually quite a few jobs in the government that you might not think are in the government related to psychology. One is through welfare, the welfare system, which is just a variety of social work. You could be working with children, you could be working with adults, you could be working with seniors, you could be working with families, you could be working with people who have just gotten out of prison and are trying to be rehabilitated, or somebody who was just injured or just came out of the military and was being rehabilitated. There are such a variety of jobs in the social services sector for psychology, but it's still tied into the government, because most of these plans, if you look at welfare or like the job rehabilitation sorts of things, they're through government funding. So as long as something is funded by the government is going to be involved in some way with the regulation and hiring and whatnot of the employees. So you can go like that. You could work for the government at some sort of like local level, like the city of Miami or the state of Florida, which you'd have to move to Tallahassee for that. But they have particular certified psychologist related jobs as well. You can work with the school system, and not just as a school psychologist or a guidance counselor, but you can work in different areas of rehabilitation and whatnot through that. You can work in legal psychology, which isn't just like outside academic stuff. You can do consulting work with the government, because a lot of times in criminal cases, something will happen. And a lot of criminal cases are whoever versus the state of whoever, right? So right now it's probably, I've already forgotten what this guy, Nicholas Cruz versus the state of Florida is probably what that case is actually called. The state of Florida brings in psychologists and other people who are subject matter experts, and they testify on behalf of what the person might be thinking or how a chemical might decay and whatnot. So there are jobs like that where you can get involved in the actual like judicial system as a psychologist and provide help there. So there's a lot of different areas. I'm going to send you out that list, like I said, and I do have a video up on here that talks through, I think, legal and IO and social services and medical related jobs that you can go and watch. And I literally go like job by job and explain what they're going to do. So your choice. I think it's like an hour long. Can you handle that? I don't know. What experience in the field of mental health could you possibly have before completing your master's? There are, again, a lot of jobs in the bachelor's level for psychology. So even with a master's, if you go to apply to a lot of jobs and say they're in like social services or rehabilitation or any of those things, maybe you're working with prisoners, or maybe you're working with people who had a substance abuse problem, you'll see on those job applications that they always say minimum of however many years experience necessary. So you can read that one way and go, well, I've never had a job with somebody who's done drugs or rehabilitated somebody who was an alcoholic, or I've never worked with that direct population. You could look at it like that and go, I don't have the experience. Or you could figure out how you can get that experience at this level without necessarily having all of the responsibility that comes with having that job. And a lot of the ways that you can do that are getting involved in some sort of research with whatever population it is that you want to work with. So at FIU, we have this Center for Children and Families, and they do a ton of different stuff related to just about everything you could think of with children. But there's also programs at FIU and now with the med school being here that work with adults and work with geriatrics and work with autism and ADHD and basically everything that you can think of. And if you do research in a lab, most of them will want you to commit 2 semesters, or if they can get you for 2 years, they'd love it. So there's your 2 years of experience right there. No, you weren't a therapist who worked with rehabilitating somebody, but you worked in a research lab where you had to be taught and trained how to interact with those populations, and you administered different measures or surveys or treatment plans or whatever it is that you did in the Center for Children and Families or anywhere else on FIU. So you can take that route, or you can try volunteering through basically any medical facility in the state of Florida or anywhere and get that same kind of experience. There's a lot of people who volunteer at Nicholas Children's Hospital or Doctors Hospital or through through the med school, through basically anywhere that has anything to do. And they literally write your hours down and they log you when you go in, and it puts what department you went into and who you worked with. And then you have either a nurse or whoever or a doctor or a therapist that can sign off on that and say that you actually have that experience. And people know if you were working in a hospital that it's a pretty legit experience. They're not going to let you into Nicholas Children's Hospital, into a neonatal ward to volunteer or whatever, unless you have some sort of credentials. So there's a lot of different little unique ways that you can get involved without having ever had a job in anything. You could basically have never had a job in your life and still be more qualified than somebody that has worked their whole life to do a particular job in psychology. So if you remind me, because I will forget this, I will send you the link to the research labs. I will send out that careers document and whatnot. I'll try to find some other resources for you. I don't think there's very many of these questions left. What are some high-paying, low-stress jobs for psychology undergrads? If you can find one, please let me know, because I'm not sure that there are any low-stress jobs in any field ever right now. I consider education and teaching to be relatively low-stress just because I love doing it. And I know it's not a requirement to sit here with my webcam and talk to myself in my room and probably make all of my neighbors think that I'm insane. But I do it anyways because I actually enjoy what I do. So the only way you're going to find something that's low stress is if it's in an area that you're actually passionate about, which is why things like the Wandering Map and the 5-year plan are helpful, because it helps you direct your attention to what you're passionate about. So my 5-year plan dealt a lot with leadership experience and education and all the kinds of things that tie into teaching. So it fit. I didn't know that when I first started teaching. I got thrown into it because it was a role for my assistantship. And I was terrified. I begged them to take it away from me because they gave me a 150-person auditorium, and I thought I was going to die. But now it's my favorite thing ever. Throw them at me. I want to be in an auditorium in front of people and talk to them all day. Perfect job ever. So you have to do something that you're passionate about. In terms of high paying, if you're looking at psychology and you're looking at high paying, you're in the wrong place. If high paying is your first thing that you talk about with psych jobs, you are definitely in the wrong place. I'm sorry to tell you that, but you are. But if you still want to keep going with it, you're like, I already invested this much into psych and I want to do something high paying, there are a few fields that you're going to want to look into. One is psychiatry. Psychiatry is going to be the most money you can probably ever make with a degree related to psychology, but you have to get into med school. You can be a therapist and make tons and tons of money, but you need to develop some sort of reputation in the area that you're trying to be a therapist in. Like if you want to go be a therapist in Coral Gables and Pinecrest, you can make a lot of money, but it's going to take you time to build up that reputation to where people are going to give you that money. Legal consulting, you can make pretty good money. And when you go look at psychology, the first thing that pops up as the most lucrative thing you can do is to get into industrial and organizational psychology. And the reason why is because it's tied so closely into business. And business degrees make more money than psychology degrees do. So once you start veering into something related to business, you're going to make more money doing it. But you're not going to find a job yet where you go into a Fortune 500 company or wherever it is that you want to work at and you go, hi, I'm an IO psychologist. Can you please hire me and give me a lot of money? You have to pursue it through some sort of business, or you have to get extremely good at statistics and pursue something called psychometrics, which is statistics and psychology mixed together. So you're one of the people that develops the assessments for employees or the hiring strategies, like those questionnaires you have to do when you try to get a job, or things like cognitive ability tests for when they're going to decide who they're going to hire or not. Like those types of things are the field that you're going to have to be in. IO psychology is not necessarily being a therapist in a workplace. We do a lot of different things. So if you want to be in the high money things, you're going to be on the I side, which is the much more quantitative, math-oriented sorts of things, like performance appraisals and all that kinds of stuff. Now, if you want to be on the more therapeutic side, like you want to decrease stress in the workplace, or you want to work on benefits, or any of those types of things, you want to work on gender issues in the workplace, you're on what they would call the O side, the organizational side. And that is something that lends itself a little bit more to academics, and the actual applied workplace is still transitioning that in. So there are some rare places where you'll see an IO psychologist job posting, but most of the time you're going to have to look through a consulting company or into training, or what they call organizational development, which is where somebody basically contracts you to come in and fix a problem. So if company A and company B merge together, and company A's employees and company B employees don't like each other, you come in and you work with them for a set period of time and you fix their problems, and then you leave and you go to another company and you do that. So it's not as easy as it sounds. I thought it was going to be easy when I started doing it. It's not as easy as it sounds. Is it common for psychologists to misdiagnose somebody? So I kept this question and decided I was going to answer it just because I liked it. I don't know who asked it, but whoever did, I liked your question. I think it's probably more common than you would even imagine for somebody to misdiagnose. Because in every field of psychology, every single field, so I teach memory and memory improvement, I teach cognition, I teach IO, I teach business at Miami-Dade and whatever, everything is so constantly evolving, and globalization and international information and all kinds of things are being thrown at us so quickly that if you look at something like autism, we didn't even know what to call that 10, 20 years ago. Or ADHD, we didn't know what to do with people who had those types of diseases, these mental health problems 10, 20 years ago. Even something as simple as depression or anxiety. I remember my mom telling me that when she was a kid, she would have panic attacks, and they just shoved her into school and said, you're making it up, you're going to have to deal with it. So the first time she ever sought mental health counseling herself, she was in her late 50s. So there are a lot of things that we're still learning about. And as we develop that information, people are going to be misdiagnosed because essentially our information looks like a little upside down triangle. So until we get to the top of it, which who knows if that will ever happen, you're not going to fully know how to do anything in psychology. You're just going to do the best with the information that you have. So it's definitely the sort of field where you're going to have to keep up with continuing education and constantly be learning what's going on, or you're going to lose clients or lose your certification, or essentially just lose touch with the entire field. That was the end of my little question thing. I have this thing at the bottom to shout out to Lisette. I have to be pronouncing your name correctly because I don't think there's any other way I could pronounce that. Lisette. Could make it very French. Lisette. No, Lisette. For your memes in your discussions, because they amuse me and because I love Pokemon, so any sort of Pokememe of the Pikachu is going to make me extremely happy. So thank you for, in the middle of all of the things that I look at, throwing Mr. Bean and Pikachu into my life. I would appreciate if all of you did that. Thanks. But in terms of the general class, we are already what is like halfway through this semester, and I feel like it's been all of a week. So I reopened all of the discussions. You can go in and post them for late points if you so choose. I've already graded all of the discussions that you have done. So I've graded in advance for some of you who are the hyperachievers. There's like 3 of you that have talked to each other through like 8 different posts now, and I find it really cute. So all of your grades for that stuff is in. All of your grades for the other assignments are in too. So for everything, there will be some sort of wiggle room after the due date where it's either already open to accept late submissions, or I will open it to accept late submissions so that you can still get partial points towards your overall 100 points at the end of the semester. So you only need a 90 in my class to get an A. I do not function on this 95 and up as an A system. I don't believe in it. So essentially, you could get to 90 points and have a complete assignment missing and just not even care because you already got your A. So when you go in percentages out of 100, so once you hit 90% over there, you're good. 80 to 83 is a B, 84 to 86 is a B plus, 87 to 89 is an A minus, and so on and so on. You can calculate down from there, but please don't do that. So if you haven't done the discussions yet, please go do them. It makes me sad. There's a few of you that haven't done them. Not a happy face. But other than that, what's wrong with you guys? There's 13 of you that are still here. You have nothing to ask? You didn't even ask me what I want for Christmas. That's very rude. It's gonna be a very sad winter break, guys. But yeah, I've gone in and written responses to some of the posts, and I will keep going in and trying to give feedback when I can. Otherwise, I will not see you again until we have the very last webinar, which I think I had scheduled on the 30th, but we might do it on the 26th or the 2nd on this Wednesday, since a lot of you seem to be available on the Wednesday. So we'll figure it out. We'll talk again. You can work up the courage to type something in my little comment box. But until then, feel free to email me at any time. I check Canvas on the daily, multiple times. I'm a night owl. If you get a response at 4 o'clock in the morning, don't think it's weird. It's not weird. It's just me. So enjoy your holidays. Think of questions. Keep being amazing. And I will see you guys at some point in the future.